This is my favorite ending in cinema. It has influenced countless films, including most directly the ending of Robert Altman's The Long Goodbye and the funeral scene of Scorsese's The Departed. It is a 66-second long take signifying renewal and death, hope and acceptance, a delicate depiction of the moment when both parties know it is finally time to say goodbye. This is the last shot in the 1949 noir classic The Third Man, directed by the English filmmaker Carol Reed. This is Holly Martins, played by Joseph Cotton, our so-called hero, and this is Anna Schmidt, played by Alida Valli, our love interest, whom he has relentlessly pursued throughout the film. Finally, he stands still for the entirety of this 66-second long shot. This film is a part of a long tradition of film noir, a genre wherein each ending is inextricably tied to leaving. Here, he allows her to leave for the first and last time. To understand the significance, we have to go back a little. Film noir was a movement defined by French film critic Nino Frank. He, like many French film critics, would have seen examples of what came to be known as film noir for the first time in France in 1946, when these 5 films were shown: The Maltese Falcon, Laura, Murder My Sweet, Double Indemnity, and The Woman in the Window. These came to be defined as film noir, in part owing to their resemblance to the protagonist's criminal nature and in part to the detective stories of the French publishing house Gallimard's série noir. Noir was characterized by cynical protagonists who were hardly heroes and took a lot of inspiration from American pulp fiction, which were the hard-boiled detective novels and crime stories popular in the 1920s and 1930s. A lot of these American pulp fiction writers, like Dashiell Hammett, Raymond Chandler, and James M. Cain, helped adapt their stories into what came to be the most famous of film noirs, The Maltese Falcon and Double Indemnity. Noir featured male protagonists with no future and a femme fatale with a shady past. They were often about lonely men who spend the entirety of the movie in limbo with ill-fated romantic partners until they are finally separated at the end by death, demonstrating that all attempts at partnership are futile and ultimately end in tragedy. Film noir is a genre of duality, of duplicity, of chiaroscuro lighting, of innocence versus evil, of femme fatales versus the girl next door, of alleyways and basements. It is the cinema of doubles and opposites. In The Third Man, almost everything is repeated. Even the ending is a mirror reflection of the beginning. The Third Man follows Holly Martins, a bumbling, naive American pulp fiction writer who arrives in post-war Vienna to take a job offered by his old friend Harry Lime, played by Orson Welles, only to discover that Harry is dead.
Heard of Harry Lime?
I've heard of him, of course, but I didn't exactly know him.
I was going to stay with him, but he died Thursday.
Goodness, that's awkward.
That what you say to people after death? Goodness, that's awkward.
Curious and confused, Holly begins investigating, but the more he learns, the less things make sense. Along the way, he falls for Anna, Harry's ex-girlfriend who still loves Harry and repeatedly rejects Holly's advances. As they dig deeper, they discover Harry faked his death and is alive, having profited by selling expired penicillin on the black market. Despite Harry's crimes, Anna remains loyal to him. Eventually, Holly helps the police track Harry down and is forced to kill him in one of cinema's greatest subterranean chase sequences, set in the Vienna sewers. The film begins and ends with Harry Lime's funeral. The Third Man is the third film of Carol Reed's trilogy, made up of Odd Man Out, The Fallen Idol, and finally The Third Man. All were released in consecutive years and can be watched back-to-back as they grapple with themes of mortality and virtue. All titles referring to wandering outcasts, upsetting the symmetry, the balance of a pair of two. All narratives feature protagonists poorly navigating various big cities, men haunted by pasts and pursued by crooked conspirators, constantly mocked by the city. The Third Man is itself a title possibly referencing a passage in the Bible when 2 men have discovered that Christ has walked alongside them, which is not far-fetched since the screenwriter for the movie, Graham Greene, had written many Catholic-themed novels in his time. The film opens and ends with a jaunty zither score by Anton Karas. We see strings vibrating, yet not the hands causing these movements. Already there's an implication of someone pulling the strings which we cannot see, indicating Holly Martins' fate is not in his hands. He is not the master of his own narrative. The Third Man title is indicative of the absent presence who is ruling. The duplicitous, corrupt Harry Lime casts his shadow over them. All of the dualities that came to define noir have been written about extensively, since many of their psychological roots found a basis in World War II. Film noir is seen as mostly an American endeavor, but since this is an English film, I'm going to talk about World War II's effect for the UK specifically. The blackouts in London began on September 1st, 1939, 2 days before Britain declared war on Germany. They were enforced every night and lasted throughout the war. The intended purpose was to make it harder for German aircraft to locate and target the populated areas. It was poetic and ironic that you stayed alive by pretending you were dead. These blackouts were enforced most regularly during the Blitz, a sustained bombing campaign carried out by Nazi Germany against the UK. London was bombed for 57 consecutive nights, 43,000 civilians were killed, and over 1 million homes were destroyed. Every night, wardens would peruse the streets of London to make sure everyone had their curtains drawn. This is said to have influenced the chiaroscuro lighting in film noir, where people are kept safest in the shadows. There was also a heavy emphasis on sound before image in film noir. During the war, you'd often hear the sound of raids, the bombs, before you saw them, if you saw them at all. And so in film noir, it is often that a threat is heard before it is seen. In an Open Culture article titled The 5 Rules of Film Noir, it is said, "Film noir hit its zenith in the late 40s, a time when veterans were returning home in droves after having witnessed unimaginable horrors. Under the weight of war trauma, men felt the brittle veneer of traditional masculinity, strong, stoic, and dominant, crack and crumble. Film noir tapped into this anxiety. It's no accident that film scholars have called film noir the male weepy." Keep in mind, in 1949, the audience who was seeing this movie had just gone through Hiroshima and Auschwitz, and so there was a real reckoning with mortality. This idea of trusting authority to keep you safe was out the window, which is why so many of the films in this time were about racketeering and the mafia. It felt like if you wanted to be safe, you had to do it yourself. You couldn't count on anyone else to keep you safe. People were reading Thoreau again, and the idea of self-dependency was becoming popular. If doing things the right way meant becoming a soldier and dying, we might as well try doing things the wrong way and become the nomad, the wanderer, the outcast. And so, because of all of the unjustified horror, people had to rise from the rubble and redefine for themselves what it meant to be a hero. Thus was born film noir. In speaking about film noir, British film critic Charles Drazen said, "None of these men are heroes, but they have a mission, and the mission is often futile and not unlike the war."
Holly, you and I aren't heroes. The world doesn't make any heroes.
And so, with a masculine hero being challenged and trust and authority crumbling, we come to the protagonist in The Third Man, Holly Martins. A man who lacks all heroic traits imaginable. He is constantly brooding, moping around, feeling sorry for himself, and jumping at any excuse to drink. With every tragic stumble, there is always a cut to Holly drinking. Always on the outskirts of the lives of others, he is the ultimate outsider, which both director Carol Reed and screenwriter Graham Greene could have related to. Heroism used to be about standing tall and proud, being impenetrable in a cavalry or as a cowboy. Then there were the trenches of the First World War, and so to survive meant to lay low, stay under the radar. The idea of a hero is troubled, and what used to be an indication of a coward is now an indication of a survivor. In the film, and in film noir in general, there are many allusions to the quote-unquote underground world. The survivors are in alleys and basements. And so there's this constant interplay between heaven and hell, heroism and cowardice, survival against all odds or heroism against all odds. Are we more willing to sacrifice ourselves or our ideals? At the beginning of the film, Holly Martins ascends the stairs looking for Harry Lime, and Carl, played by Paul Horbiger, Harry Lime's porter, replies, "He is now," and he points up, "in hell," or points down, "in heaven," reversing the expected gestures confused. This confusion between up and down, heaven and hell, reflects a deeper moral uncertainty, as if to say, who knows what's what anymore. With the ending mimicking the beginning in The Third Man, there is a repetition, a sense of futility, that we have been here before and will continue to repeat ourselves, a sense that we will repeat the same mistakes over and over, unless, as T.S. Eliot said, we see things anew. When we watch Holly for the first time do this. To quote T.S. Eliot from his 4 quartets, "We shall not cease from exploration, and the end of all of our exploring will be to arrive where we started and know the place for the first time. And so we arrive at the beginning of the end. This last shot is leveled and symmetrical, ironically with the exception of Holly, which is rare for this film. The Third Man was known for its extensive use of Dutch angle shots. Apparently, after the film was screened, William Wyler sent Carol Reed a level with a note saying, "Next time you make a picture, just put it on top of the camera." The tilted shot throughout the film recalls a judgment scale weighing good versus evil. What is right, what is wrong, which side are we to believe, which to lean towards? The camera position itself is inquisitive and left unbalanced, unfinished. The tilted shot recalls German expressionism, which film noir grew out of. When I think of the tilted shot, it makes me think of a person who tilts their heads in confusion. We tilt our heads when trying to understand something, when we are questioning something, when we need to retreat into our own thoughts to understand what is right in front of us. This tilted inquisitiveness is often how Holly feels throughout the film. And that the last shot is finally balanced can also be an insight into Holly's emotional understanding of Anna. He is finally not curious about what she is thinking. He knows that she does not love him. It is also at street level. Throughout noirs, and specifically in this film, with the grand subterranean chase sequence, it is significant that it is at street level. Throughout the film, there is an emphasis on ascension and descent. We begin by ascending the stairs to look for Harry. Then Harry's grave is lowered into the ground. Across Europe, cities were bombed into ruins, forcing people to seek safety underground, in cellars, bunkers, and sewers. In The Third Man, the chase through the Vienna sewers is not just thrilling action, it's a symbolic descent into the underworld, into the moral ambiguity and darkness that defies the entire genre. Underground spaces became synonymous with safety. All the more striking then that Reed chose to stage the final shootout in the sewers, a place once associated with refuge. The last shot is bright and balanced. It is out in the open rather than in between claustrophobic alleys. There is no rubble, everything is intact and yet bare. If a bomb were to strike, there would be nothing to vanish. Holly, who believed himself to be the moral hero for exposing Harry Lime, expects some kind of emotional resolution, maybe even gratitude. Instead, Hannah rejects him completely, walking past him in a long take that emphasizes his utter insignificance. When the 66-second shot begins, Anna is a dot in the distance. Every second she gets closer, she has the option to look at him, and every second I think she will. And then finally, she is gone. She's made her decision and left Holly Martins alone. He has arrived where he started. Richard Raskin, in his essay on the dynamics on an unhappy ending, states, "Yet another source of richness within the final scene are the binary oppositions running through it. Holly's immobility is played off against Anna's unstoppable propulsion forward, just as Holly's concern for Anna is played off against Anna's icy indifference towards him." Throughout the final shot, leaves continue to fall onto the road. For Moss, this was a curtain of autumn leaves, leaving a last image of the decay that has played such a formidable part in the film's ambiance. When Anna leaves, we are left with just Holly. It is clear that Holly has been trying to escape his loneliness this whole film, and finally it is made starkly clear. He is a lone man with a mode of transport, a hat, and a cigarette. A means to leave, to hide, and to rest. In film noir, the hero as we once knew it was gone. The war left confusion, self-dependency, split partnership, existential dread, distrust of authority. The war destroyed our ideal of the hero. What noirs rebuilt was their own definition of a hero. And The Third Man asks if maybe what makes a hero is knowing when to let go, when to say goodbye.